Johanna, great to see you. Thank you for the opportunity to sit down and have this conversation with you today. We've known each other for several years, and I'm really looking forward to finding out even more about you today. You were born in Sweden. You are the mother of two beautiful children. You've worked in the corporate world, a long career in corporate business, and you founded your own company. That's a little short summary of Johanna. Would you be kind enough to tell me more? Who is Johanna?
So, I guess you told me.
Give me more.
I am a woman. And most of all, I think I'm a human being trying to live life to the fullest. And the reason why I'm doing that is probably because at some point in time I hit rock bottom. And it changed a whole lot, my perspective on life and who I am and what I believe in. So yeah, Johanna is a human being trying to live life and enjoy it and be the best possible version of myself. And to help other people to also do so. To just become the best possible versions of themselves. I guess that's it in a nutshell.
The obvious question I have is, what is rock bottom? What does rock bottom look like, feel like, smell like? It sounds heavy.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. It's, I used to say it's the breakdown to get to the breakthrough. When everything had to fall apart, to fall into pieces. And I guess I had that in my life. Physically, emotionally, mentally. And had that for a while, yeah. And then gradually got myself up. And I think I'm here to show people how you can get up. And in a way take full responsibility for your life again. And kind of steer and lead your life again. You know, that's why we talk a lot about leadership of self or leadership in general. That's it, how you lead yourself. And then, of course, also ultimately others.
Where did the recovery, the start of the journey from rock bottom, what did it lead to? What changed? And where did it take you?
Wow, what did not change?
What did not change?
Yeah,
probably an easier question.
Yeah. A whole lot changed. Of course, it was a gradual process. It was a process of finding back to who am I? Who I am really, without the expectations and the voices and the buzz around me. Who am I? If I'm not what I have created, that house or that, business card or all these other roles that you're juggling. What's underneath that? Who am I? And I guess for me to get to that question, I had to get, in a sense, completely naked.
Wow.
To figure that one out. So emotions around that period, a whole lot of fear, anxiety, loss of control, plenty of it.
Scary.
Scary, very scary, yeah.
When you were in rock bottom, was there a light bulb moment where you thought, certainly I think it's an interesting question to ask you, because for someone watching that maybe is just starting or has maybe just hit rock bottom, what could you say about the moment where you thought, hey, I can come back from this? There is, for want of a better word, light at the end of the tunnel.
I don't think I can pinpoint one moment. There were, it would be that light, and I think what I had constantly, even though I was down there, this survival instinct. I'll make it. I'll go through this.
And that survival instinct, I've heard this before, it gets you through. It's stronger than anything that you have to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, so much doubt, anxiety and all of that, but there was this inner voice saying, you're not going to die like this. You will go through it. I don't know how and when and how, you know, but you'll make it.
Okay.
Yeah. Even if you lose everything on the way. Yeah.
And you were willing to lose everything on the way? You understood the risk where it was there?
I know.
No. Not as easy as that.
I was holding on to a lot. I was afraid. Who would I be, you know, if I wouldn't have my position and my house and my money and my marriage and, you know, everything that I built up? Who am I then? Yeah, that I was holding on for a long time.
Everything that people want, the classic expectations, the partner, the money, the house, the children.
Yeah.
Not necessarily materialistic things, but the expected things, no?
Yeah, of course. You know, that's also what we in society think, that, you know, we made it, you know, now we're successful.
And then what happens?
And then what happens? And then at some point you might realize you created an avatar. You know, that at some point you kind of lost yourself in this journey.
And that avatar isn't necessarily a compatriot, a friend. It can be an enemy, I guess.
Well, in my case, it was. I didn't feel, you know, there was an emptiness inside. I didn't feel I was fully me, you know. I was doing everything that was expected, but there was something inside me constantly searching for, is this it?
When did you destroy the avatar? When did it disappear?
Oh, you're going deep in the beginning. I think the moment I was in the emergency.
Okay.
And I spent a few nights there.
Okay.
I think that was the moment when the avatar got destroyed.
The last time you saw him? Or
yeah, I realized this might be if I don't change it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do
you have a lighter question?
I do. Let's go light. Through your journey, it took you to founding a company, your own company called Peak Perspective.
Yes.
Now, I am an alumni of Peak Perspective. I must confess, I've massively benefited from what yourself, your team, and your company do. Would you be kind enough to share a little bit about Peak Perspective, what it is and what it does?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I created Peak Perspective with the idea of bringing out the most in people. It's the peak perspective on life, right? When we take a look from above, who are we? It's a simple idea of we work with a few elements, and one is going outdoors to disconnect from life and connect with self again. We work with movement. Many people that come are stuck, and the best way to get going is actually to get going physically. And then we talk. We have serious, real depth, honest conversations about life. Where are you in life? Where do you stand? What are you planning to do? What are your wildest dreams inside?
Wow, okay.
And what's hindering you from doing them? And that was the idea. And I built it based upon what I learned, how I went through my process. And we address these to individuals, but also teams or leaders, because it's the same, right? I just want to be the best possible version of myself.
I think that's fascinating, and I think that's something that I saw as a huge positive of the Peak Perspective. It can be very much based around the individual, or it can be very much based around the team. It's not one shoe for this one and for this one. It really can dovetail into being super effective for both individuals and teams, correct?
I mean, the bottom line is human beings, right? Mm. And even if you work with a team, to bring out the best in a team, you want everyone to be both the most authentic and real they can be, because only then you know what the complementary assets are. Only then you know how you can create the wholeness by knowing the different parts. Okay. And starting there on that, we have difficulties. So many people walk around through life with masks of fear of failure, are having difficulties in showing who they fully are.
What I took from Peak Perspective, one of the real drivers for me was the message of self-leadership. It runs through the heart of Peak Perspective. Mm-hmm. Everything revolves back to self-leadership. Yeah. What is self-leadership to you, and how do you inspire this and drive this with Peak Perspective?
Yeah. In a sense, it's taking full responsibility for your life. Starting by leading your life before you lead others.
Sounds super scary.
It is. It is. It's, yeah. You know, I like to call it, it's like taking a close look into the mirror on a bright, sunny day when every spot is visible on your body. It's not so easy, you know, of course I take responsibility for my life, but if you go down that path, there's a lot to discover.
Now I know where a couple of the mantras come from Peak Perspective. So one thing that I'd read before and I'd heard being involved with Peak Perspective, it's time to unhide. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And by that you're saying taking responsibility. I mean, in a way, you know, people hide from responsibility and accountability, both in business and in personal life.
Yeah, and to give you a very concrete example, you know, we have a tendency to blame others when things go wrong. You know, the person or the situation, you know, I don't know, he should have done that. In that moment, you are not taking full responsibility for your life. What was your part in creating it? Mm-hmm. You know, there is a dance, two parties are in it.
And that's taking people into deep waters when they have to look at this. This is where the fun starts.
Yeah, and I, you know, at some point I started to do this. I decided to take full responsibility for everything that was happening in my life, everything. Which meant that every situation, everything that was happening to me, I needed to look back to the question, what was my part in it? And what am I learning from this right now? About myself, and what do I need to change?
Some were harder than others, I'm sure.
Oh yes. It's not fun. You know, you go back to your shortcomings. But ultimately, this is only how we want to live.
It's not fun, but I imagine if you can conquer it, it's hugely inspiring. It's hugely energizing. No, you will gain vitality and energy from being able to do this.
You simply grow.
You simply grow.
What happens? The other side is to stay a victim.
Oh.
You know, and here you grow because you're constantly learning about your own behaviors and what caused something.
You know, to be a victim, it's crazy because to be a victim is the worst feeling, but on the other side, quite a comfortable feeling.
Oh,
it gives you an out, no?
Oh, yes. Someone else, he did this to me, or,
What could I do?
What could I do?
It's not my fault.
It's not my fault, or you should have done this. Oh, yes. It makes life easy.
I've said that a few times.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I want to go to another mantra of Peak Perspective. I call it the 3 Ps. Mm-hmm. Releasing people's, when they attend Peak Perspective in whatever form or whatever guise, whether it be a corporate company, whether it be an individual, whether it be a team bonding session, you look to release the power, the potential, and the unique path in them. That's a great statement. How do you fulfill that? And how do you hold their hand on a journey like that?
Well, actually, I'm not doing anything. I'm just enabling a path, and then it's people walking it on their own. Mm-hmm. What you need is the willingness to grow and to dare, and we have so much power and so much potential within us. And also this path, there is a consensus story out there on how things are supposed to be, it's like a prevailing value system. But what if that story is not my story? Do we dare to say, well, actually, guys, I need to take off here? And it's scary because it might lead to making yourself an unagreeable person, standing alone. It's only you and your inner voice. Saying,
everybody wants to be liked, no?
Everybody wants to be liked. That's the bottom line. And if you go there, people might not understand you. They might even think you're kind of crazy.
People might walk away from you.
Oh yes, they do. They do. Because if you're not living up to their expectations, they might not enjoy it anymore. But at the same time, it gives me clarity, because if he only likes or she only likes me when I'm living up to my expectations, that person actually doesn't like the whole of Johanna.
We always have this beautiful running theme of self-leadership and leadership in business. that is an extremely challenging factor in business as well. So when you're a leader, it's better to be the popular leader, no? It's easier, it's nice, you know, you say yes to everybody, you give people what they want. It must be the hardest thing to make the difficult decisions and say no to this and no to that, and sometimes actually be unliked in a team. Is it possible to be unliked in a team and still a great leader?
Well, I think it's that's where you want to be, because everything else is causing pressure.
Okay.
If you're trying to make sure that everybody's happy around you, you are swimming in a lake of expectations. And people will feel it. They are feeling if they're being led by someone who's being led. Or if this is a leader who's leading from within.
They can spot a fake.
Oh, yes. You feel it. Everybody going through it when you're being led by someone who's, giving orders downwards, or where you feel it doesn't come from within.
I can relate to that.
And I think, even though it might be tough decisions at times, at least you feel that person knows what he's talking about. And at least I then can make a decision, am I going to walk his path or not? But at least this is his path.
I think it's one of the hardest decisions in life, to make a decision where you don't get an instant result. So you could make a decision and get no benefit from it at all short term, but long term, it's hugely beneficial.
Yeah. It's about facing fears.
Facing your fears. Yeah. Johanna, during our conversation today, you have written an ebook. A beautiful ebook that I have had the pleasure of at least tapping into to some degree. And I want to ask you about some of the topics. I want to ask you about some of the titles, which I find very informative, super interesting, and I think it's a great topic to have a conversation regarding. The word no. Part of your healing, I believe, was centered around the word no. Totally relatable again in business. I've worked in corporate situations where I have found it very, very difficult to say no. And in the past, I should have said no and I didn't. Why did you choose to start your pages with learning to say no? I
think it's a very crucial element of discovering who you are. It says actually saying no to others and yes to self.
Whoa.
Yeah. And there is a whole lot in the topic of saying no to others. There is the topic of expectations. There is the topic of guilt. There is the topic of fear of rejection, of not being loved, of not belonging anymore. And then there is another topic in there, and that's the topic of victimizing people, and I find that especially interesting.
Victimizing people?
Yes.
Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so when we have a hard time saying no, I mean, obviously it's the fear of not being liked, right? But it will have consequences, our no, that people will reject us, we don't belong. But there's another element to it, and it's this feeling of I need to do it to help someone else. I can't say no because that person needs me. And what we're actually doing then is not allowing for that person to grow.
Yeah, that's interesting. Some people would look at that and say, hey, I'm a great person, I'm helping, I'm there for them.
Yeah, but my presence is hindering growth.
Okay.
Because we know that if anyone is going to grow muscles, they need to lift the weights themselves. A person is not growing any muscles by you standing next to them and lifting the weight for them.
I see. It's almost a short-term fix. Again, they may feel better for a day or two, and then the problem comes back because they haven't
and that person is
dealt
looking at you instead of looking at himself.
Okay.
So what you're actually doing is harming instead of helping.
Wow.
It took me a few years to figure that one out, but as a coach, I work a lot with that. I try to step aside, and I believe, and we know that with children, we know that the growth for children starts with parents stepping back, allowing them to stand, to walk.
We're talking about the helicopter parents here,
yes.
no?
Yeah.
And I can know for a fact, as being a father myself, it's hard to do. It's really hard to do because your intentions, I think you think your intentions are correct now.
But you might be harming. You might come with fear, and not allowing a person, because we don't know how big or grow a person, you know, how much potential he has until that person has stepped into it, tried it out.
Do you see this in peak perspective, in group scenarios where you can see a fixer and a helper?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
You spot them pretty early on.
Yeah. You know, when you're out there on hikes, we work a lot. You know, the idea of outdoors is we also take a lot of our groups on hikes.
Yes.
In the mountains, you know, different locations in Europe.
Don't tell me too much. I have some questions on that.
Okay, but it's, you know, you can see it easily if someone starts carrying the backpack of someone else, or, you know, giving their water even though they might be thirsty as well. You know, all this,
for them.
All these elements, and of course you look at it and observe it. And where's the water?
Fear, guilt. And again, I think we've already related to that on both our topics so far on 2 occasions. It's the need to be liked, the need to be wanted. And when you say no to someone, that can cause... I mean, the word confrontation is tough for most people. Very few people run to confrontation now.
But it you know, the confrontation is happening if the counterpart is not accepting you. Right? Because if you simply clearly state, this is me, and the other person say, I accept you, you don't really have a dispute, do you? The dispute comes when that person is disappointed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there, of course, there is also, you know, that's something you could look into. Who am I hanging out with?
Feel it to heal it.
Yeah.
Could be a pop song. Could be this one resonates with me. If I can share, I went through an exercise with you once where you wanted me to scream really loud, really at the top of my voice, and I couldn't do it. And I was annoyed that you felt it was important for me to do it. Why were you driving me to that, to release emotions? And why did I have to feel it?
So I'm going to give that question back to you. So when you were able to do it, what happened? What was the difference?
The difference was I was released. I was holding on to some things that I didn't even necessarily know I was holding on to. I thought I was okay. I thought through some of the life experiences I'd had, through my own rock bottom, I thought that I dealt with it. And I dealt with a good percentage of it, but I hadn't dealt with all of it. And you used to say to me the words, there's a grain of sand there. And I used to think, I don't know what she's talking about. What is she talking about? I'm fixed. And then I couldn't get angry. We did the anger exercise where I had to look in someone's eyes and really go for them, and I couldn't. So I think I didn't see it. You feel everybody hangs on to something?
Yeah, of course. It's very hard to let go, to be completely in the flow. Yeah, we do. And emotions are stored in our body. You know, we have like an emotional memory in here. And it's important to release it. And especially emotions like anger. You know, we also value, you know, we evaluate emotions. Some are good and some are bad. But what's allowed in my family? Did we talk about emotions? In which? Was it allowed to be happy when we talked about the sadness? Even though I saw my father being sad constantly. You know, we have a lot going on. There's a lot of stories around emotions.
Are there good emotions and bad emotions?
No.
There's only emotions.
There's only emotions. And we have so many of them constantly running through our system. And realizing that kids are good at it until people, you know, grown-ups come in and mess them up. But they can switch from one emotion to another really quickly.
You've mentioned before, and as part of your exercise you do for peak perspective, for individuals, for businesses, you talk about the power of emotion and feeling the emotion and learning from the emotion. Could you give me a little bit more on that? I think it's a super powerful tool.
So there are so many angles. One angle is simply that there's wisdom in an emotion. If I get an emotion, it's telling me something. You know, if I have the emotion fear, I need to look into this. I shouldn't suppress it.
The norm would be to react to an emotion, correct? And I think what you're saying is to be in the emotion.
Yes.
Learn from the emotion.
Yes. And to me, it was a long journey because it's not fun, right? It can be, if you're in the fun emotions, life is good. I learned that for me to get to know emotions, I needed to go into silence. To kind of just take out everything else and to be with myself. And I hated it. I'm a social person. I like to be around people. The idea of sitting in a restaurant completely on my own or spending a weekend with no stimulation scared me to death. And I knew why.
Why?
Because I would be scared of what could come up. I would be scared of me, and the emotions and the thoughts that would come up. So, I forced myself, I just went there.
I think there's a certain irony that people would be more scared of the emotion coming up rather than not dealing with the emotion now and suppressing it.
It's the fear of the fear.
Fear of the fear?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like, the ghost in the closet. And when you open up the closet, you realize it's only 5 socks. But you build it up,
Yeah, being scared of scary situations. It sounds ridiculous when you say it like that.
Yeah, and in a way, you're constantly living in pain instead of just going in there once and then it's gone.
Okay.
It's the suppression of it is causing more pain than actually just going in there. That's something I learned. And in this moment of silence, and you hang out with emotion, and it's not fun.
Yeah.
No, when I was doing that, and when I was going through my crisis, and I lost a lot in my life, and I had to feel that loss. I felt a whole lot of loneliness, anxiety, and despair. All of that was out there.
And when you have that, the last thing you want to be is alone now, normally.
Yeah.
And yet that's probably what you need.
Of course, you want to be distracted or do anything. I don't know.
Or have noise and have people
noise,
around you.
or even drink or do something. But just to sit there with it, And I did that, and I learned that over time, emotions, they melt, they kind of disappear. But what you need to do with it is figure out, why am I having this? What am I learning about myself now? And what do I need to change in life? We tend to numb ourselves to not really take a look at what's going on in our lives. And in a way, just simply escaping from ourselves. If we're not looking into emotions, we're.
How often do you ask someone if they're okay and they immediately say yes?
Oh, yes.
And I've tried this as I've got older and as I've had some pretty difficult life experiences. There's been a couple of occasions where someone's asked me if I'm okay, and I've said, no, I'm not that good. That makes people uncomfortable. No? Yeah. It's not the standard answer. Yeah, I'm fine.
Yes. And by now when I talk to people and they tell me, how are you doing? I'm good. Okay.
You've done that to me before.
You just wait it out a bit.
Johanna, peak perspective. I said that if self-leadership runs through the heart of peak perspective, so does nature.
Yes.
So does movement. Tell me a little bit about that. Tell me about how you embrace that with peak perspective, and individually, of course, as well.
Yeah. What I put in peak is, of course, my journey. What I learned that we find ourselves in nature. It helps us to connect to self. When we kind of shut off the bus and put pause on life, and we go out in nature, we can start to feel again. Feel connected to something, to ourselves, but our surrounding. We smell, we sense, we open up our senses. And we go into a certain silence. So that's what we started working with, nature. And of course, it's also the idea of when you work with someone in a setting where they're constantly, overloaded with expectations, you take them completely out. Then they have the freedom to be. And who are they then? So that's the one aspect of nature. And of course, it calms down nervous systems. We have so much stimulation. People are constantly cortisol rushing through their bodies, and just, I'll put you here. I've had coaches coming to me and they're so excited, their first coaching session with me, and I have millions of things, but I can feel it's like a electric shock in their system. And I had sessions where I told them, You just stand there next to that tree for 5 minutes and just close your eyes, and then we'll start talking.
And do you play with the role of nature? Do you go to different locations? Is it you know, sometimes you're talking water, sometimes you're talking mountains, sometimes you're talking forest.
Of course, yeah, of course. You know, you can fool around with it. You can use everything which is in nature. Beautiful. Of course, you know, the rock, the stability of mountains, you know, that gives you, you know, I'm holding you. And also that, you know, surmounting mountains and climbing and all of that. And the water, just rinsing, cleansing, that flow of life. And some people have a whole holding on and just, you know, of course I use it.
And is it embraced by attendees? Can you see the joy when they've done this? Can you see the difference from day one to day two when you've been outside? Yeah, that's special.
They come and they are nervous, you know, they have this super gear, very equipped, you know, not a spot very often, you know, they spot it because they're not used to hiking, and then at the end, you know, they're dirty, but inside they're so free. Yeah. That was nature, sorry. You said movement as well.
Right? Movement, yeah. So you're in nature, but what are you doing out there? Are you biking? Are you swimming? Are you doing a combination of all sorts?
Yeah, so...
Do you have a favorite?
What I do out there? So we often hike. You know, it's about climbing the mountain. And it's metaphorically, you know, that's what we have in life, right? We have these mountains, we go up and down, and when I see people hike, the biggest mountains is not that one, it's in here. You know, the fear of, will I make it? Am I, you know, how good am I compared to the others? That's what's hindering most people in life. They're only in the mountains, so, you know, so we work with that a lot.
Can you tell when you're with a group of people, by the way they are in nature and walking, who is going to really need some extra push and some support, and who is nearly there? Can you feel it out when you're with the group?
Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. They don't have to say much.
You're observing.
Yeah. But what I learned in life is also you wait for the moment to walk in there. Sometimes it's good to hang out with the pain for a bit. You know, I can see people and they are suffering in their heads.
Hang out with the pain.
Yeah, you know, they have their stories going on, you know, about self-doubt and I'm not sporty enough and I cannot do this and all of that. And I see it. And sometimes just allow them to hang out with it.
You use very effectively the terminology of coming out of your head into your body, and coming out of your body and into your head. Could you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, we tend to think about life instead of living life, of being in life. I think that's one aspect to it. So I try to help people to get out of their heads and get into the body.
For your classic overthinker, I would put myself in that category. I would imagine that being extremely helpful.
Mm-hmm. It is also because if you take the hike as an example, they don't get much information. They don't know for how many hours they're going to walk, they don't know the destination. And for a thinker, you know, someone who wants to have the control, this is scary.
That's going to freak them out.
They freak them out. And at some point, they stop thinking because there's no point in thinking. And they start feeling it.
It must feel like a relief for them.
Yeah, in a sense, it's a lot of baggage that they kind of just put down. Okay, you know. Yeah. And there is, the reason why I do this, of course, we have excellent brains and we can do a whole lot of amazing stuff with our brains. But there is wisdom in the feeling. And in society today, we tend to put so much focus on the thinking instead of the feeling it. And I learned over life that my feelings are guiding me a lot in life. I can feel if something is right. I can feel if something is wrong. And I can feel if this is a person I want to hang out with.
Has that become more in tune as you've got older, as you've experienced life, or have you always had that with you?
So I think it increased tremendously as my body broke.
Okay.
Due to all the pressure actually I had, and probably also covering up for so many years that at some point my body couldn't hold the pressure. I mean, that was for me the starting point. I think I need to go into this, and figure out why this is going on. Today I do it automatically. I am very attuned with, my body and my emotions, what's going on. And I can feel it. I feel when things are good. So I can have this inner compass that tells me there and not there. I don't need a lot of advices for people. And of course I check in. It's always good to hear. But my truth is in here.
I have another question later about that.
Okay.
Because it's a big topic. It's a big topic for me. I think we've covered a lot of this point, but responsibility and accountability. Mm-hmm. Without that, it's hard to achieve self-leadership. Would you agree?
Oh, yes. Yeah. You need to take responsibility for your actions in your life. Yeah.
When you work with your corporate clients, is this something that that becomes a topic, the responsibility and accountability? Can you see this as arguments between team members in the corporate environment you work in? Is this something that can be a powerful tool if people do start being accountable and being responsible?
Of course. Absolutely. Yes.
And without it, I guess you just have a whole scenario of people pointing at each other and blame game.
Yes. And we see that happening a lot out there.
Would you link that direct? I mean, I guess that has I'm asking an obvious question, but maybe I'm looking for validation. That then you would link with company performance. I would imagine without accountability and responsibility, it's no fluke that the companies that have that are probably more successful than the companies that do not have that.
Of course. And this is a different kind of responsibility and accountability we're talking about. This is not, I have the role. This is about me in my life. It's my attitude towards how I approach any situation in life.
Can you think of, I'm throwing one at you here briefly without preparation, but how do you work with that with Peak Perspective when you're in a corporate environment? How are you working with cultivating a responsibility, accountability and that mindset in groups?
It always go back to the question, you start with yourself, right? It's always mirroring yourself. So what have I done? Which was my part in creating this? There's always a part, that grain of sand. And take a look at that part. That's it. That's a common thread.
Time to let go. That sounds super scary to me. So I've let go of things in my life and I haven't let go of things in my life.
Oh.
How on earth do you help people with that? And how do you instill that in yourself, Johanna?
Oh yeah. Oh.
When I wrote that note to ask you, I thought that's a difficult one.
When we talk about it, I can feel the pain because letting go is painful. We created stuff in life and we created it because we like it. So it's painful to let go. But I sometimes think that in society we have created an illusion of how life works. Because everything is constantly evolving. Everything. Nature is moving, constantly evolving. Our body is moving and changing constantly. Everything, our mental state is constantly...
Our conversation in 3 years' time would probably be completely different.
Everything is constantly development. But we seem to have still this idea of what we created, we stick to, we hold on to. And this is making life very complicated. Relationships, jobs, whatever is out there. It's like, I created this, now I have to stick to it. Even though everything might have changed. And sometimes you can change together, beautiful. The whole thing can evolve. But sometimes you have grown out of it. And then it becomes scary. What do you do if you're grown out of something?
It can be that some people would live a whole life from start to finish and not let go of something they should have let go of.
Yes, and that is causing pain.
How do they know to let go?
So, you have to feel it.
You have to feel it.
You have to feel it. You have to be really honest with yourself.
You have to take responsibility.
Yes, you have to really feel, am I very truly happy? Am I happy right now in this marriage, in my job?
Johanna, how do you know if it's a fleeting moment or it's ingrained and something needs to be changed?
Yeah, you know it. Because if you have that inner voice that keeps on coming back over and over again, if someone planted that seed inside you, is there to take a look at. You know,
and you can understand why people find that the hardest thing, though, because that is uncomfortable. And you know, we discussed earlier about making a decision that hurts like hell initially, but has far greater benefits in the future. That's where I imagine the difficulty comes.
Yes, it is. It's because you know, the process of letting go is going to be through a dark tunnel. And there is another side, and you know, on the other side, it's going to be more sparkling and lighter. But you don't know that, because at least what you have, right? But it's like you're walking around with shoes who are not fitting you anymore, but you're trying to make them somehow fitting.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. Also, I feel sometimes people don't have someone telling them is sparkling at the end of the tunnel, there's energy at the end of the tunnel. Yeah. They don't have anyone saying that to them. They only have their own thoughts. No?
Yeah, and what they often hear is, you know, the grass is not green on the other side, or, you know, don't be so egoistic, think about the kids, or whatever it is, you know. Yeah, but it's a well-paid job, you know. It could be a lot worse. It's also difficult on the market right now.
I've got to pay the bills.
You know, yes, you know. You can hear so many comments around that. But if you have that feeling of, there's more, there needs to be more, then you're up for more. And these kind of separations, even if it's changing jobs or moving to a new location or, you know, separating, divorcing, it can be done in a very smooth and happy way if both parties are realizing it has served its purpose. Thank you for an amazing time together. Thank you for all the learnings made. I love you so much that I let you grow. And I'll grow in this direction and allow you to go in this direction.
I find it so hard because saying goodbye can be really sad, no?
Yeah, but it can also be grateful because it doesn't mean that it's disappearing. It simply means that it's changing form.
And the danger is when you have a situation like that and you cannot act, I would imagine with time it would become more and more toxic and more damaging.
So what happens is often people go into a state of functioning.
Okay.
They stop feeling,
Existing.
They numb themselves. You know, and at some point it even leads to a burnout. It's this moment of, you know, it doesn't have any sense or meaning anymore.
I've seen people like that. I've seen people that they look like they've lost their pizzazz. They look grey almost. Yeah. Maybe these people are holding on to something that they shouldn't do. Maybe, I don't know.
And they might be functioning in their jobs, or they might be functioning in their relationships. And a part of them is actually dying. And that's the worst thing you can do to yourself.
That sounds super sad. Yeah,
and it's not only the worst thing you can do to yourself, but if you're a parent, you're causing harm to your kids. Because they're learning that you're not allowed to be fully you.
I can relate to that. Mm-hmm. I've got a couple more topics that I'd love to.
Okay.
I'd love to learn from you about. This one stirs up sometimes frustration in me.
Okay.
Forgiving. I know what you would say to me. Sometimes I felt that if I forgive someone, I've lost.
Oh yeah.
I don't like to lose necessarily. Who does? Forgiving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So forgiving has nothing to do with right and wrong. Forgiving is simply the act to let go of the past. Forgiving is simply saying, I'm not going to carry the pain anymore. That's it. There's no right and wrong. So that's the first part. Mm-hmm. The second part of it, you know, when we're having a hard time to forgive, we're still being a victim. We're still hurt. We feel we have not been understood, we have not been seen, you know, we have not been loved, and we kind of want revenge, you know, or want to be, yeah. But there it's important to understand that the person who might have hurt you probably did it from the best of their knowledge. People act out of, you know, the wisdom, the state of knowledge, experience they made so far in life. So they acted what I thought were the best decisions. It might not be what's best for you, but that's what they did. And I cannot be angry with them for making a decision based upon what they know. In a sense, I just have to respect that.
If you can forgive, yes it does, and if you forgive, we've touched upon this in our conversation, but you are then the opposite of being a victim now. You are gaining your power.
You're gaining your power, and I'm not in pain anymore. You know, because what people do is, you know, I went through a marriage and I'm never ever going to go in a relationship again because men are. Wow. You are not going to forgive, sweetheart, are you? Or, you know, whatever it is. I had a dominant manager. I'm never even going, you know, okay. So that thing you're going to carry for the rest of your life. You know, whatever that person did to you was what that person was able to do in that point of time. Release it.
That's a very healthy way of looking at it, and it makes sense.
And of course, you can still decide, am I going to hang out with this person for the future? That's a decision you can make. That goes back to letting go, right? But I can forgive.
I want to ask you on that, because sometimes to me, it sounds like a contradiction in terms. So you forgive someone, but then you don't have them in your life anymore. Can the two coexist?
Of course, yes.
Some people would say truly forgiving someone would be to forgive them and keep them in your life.
You know, a person who's been in your life can never go away, right? Because you have shared memories and parts of you. It's stored inside your memories. But it might be that the relationship is simply changing.
Okay.
Yeah, and sometimes we also have to forgive someone who is not willing to forgive us back. That's also an act. I, you know, forgive myself for what I caused you. If you're not able to forgive me, it's okay. But at least we've done our part. We took responsibility for our part.
That seems such a difficult topic and such a personal topic. Do you dare go there with peak perspective?
With people? Mm-hmm. Oh yes, I do. So if I'm sometimes I can feel people are going through heavy stuff where they had, you know, parental topic, childhood topics, where they felt they got really hurt, really, really hurt. And they are not having good contacts with parents or ex-husbands, whatever. The act is then simply of, you know, taking responsibility for your part and let go. Because we cannot expect that people can be in the same developmental state that we are at. You know, they are making decisions based upon what they know. And I might be here and they might be there, and I cannot pull the grass and get them there. I might be waiting a lifetime for them, but why should I? It's like I'm talking Latin to someone who can only understand Greek.
Yeah.
You know, I don't need to do it. I just need to take responsibility for my part.
I like when you say looking at accepting and understanding why they've done what they've done. I think that can help, that can aid, because I think often people don't ask that question. They don't look at the other side of things. Why is this person doing this? And then maybe there can be a little bit more compassion given, rather than the usual, which is, you know.
Because ultimately you have two people and they want what's best for them. Hi, I stand here, I want this. This is best for me. Hi, I stand here, I want this is best for me. And it collides at times.
Yeah.
You know, and these needs are so strong. And these needs are so strong. You know?
Before we leave this topic, another question on forgiveness. Why does it seem to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, why do sometimes we manage to forgive people and things and situations, but we find it so hard to forgive ourselves?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because that can be really destructive, no?
Yeah. We have a lot of guilt. Yeah. And it's the same circle there again, right? What I did back then, I did to the best of my knowledge. And what I needed back then, it's okay. I can let it go. I don't need to hold grudges on myself. You know, today I stand in a different corner, I look at it differently. But back then, I couldn't do differently. I don't need to be angry with myself for that.
If somebody can master that, whether it be in a business environment or particularly in personal life, I mean, that can be so positive and inspiring and it can really drive people with momentum now. I think when people hang on to, you know, this constant criticism, this constant like, you know, oh, I've messed up there, and there's no forgiveness, then that's going to hinder them.
It's again, they're holding on to a lot of pain. They're walking around with, you know, with suitcases.
Everybody can forgive themselves.
Oh,
You believe this?
of course. Of course.
I find that positive.
Yeah. Learn from it. Move on.
Okay. You, almost my last topic. I'm learning a lot here. You mentioned inner voice. I want to ask you, and you'd also touched upon it, but you didn't use the word, intuition.
Yeah.
Inner voice, intuition. How do you know which is which? What's more important?
So these two, for me and my vocabulary, they are melted into one.
Okay.
Yeah? But what we also have is sometimes, you know, that critical voice, you know, or that anxious voice. So we have voices inside us. You know, we can also pick up voices of our parents. Don't do that, you're not good enough, or whatever, you know, expectations of others. There are also all these kind of voices on our heads, right? I guess your question is, how do you know which kind of voice is talking to me now? So, first of all, I learned if you want to listen to voices, you need to get away from other voices.
Okay.
So you need to go into silence, where you can actually hear your own voice.
Okay.
If you want to make a decision, and it's a decision that needs to come from within, make sure you find your own inner voice. And, you know, nature, movement, silence are tools that I use to get there. And then, when you start listening to your voices, there might be a whole lot coming up. But I learned that inner clarity voice of mine, that intuitive voice, has a very subtle and no drama language. It would just tell me, do it. Has a very positive, yes, or a clear, no. Those other voices would be, are you stupid? Who do you think you are? Have you thought about this? All the consequences? That's kind of the brain.
This is so amazing because, you know, like, Peak Perspective is so fundamentally involved in business and corporation, as well as self-improvement and individuality. Why is it almost frowned upon to go with your gut? You know, we call the gut feeling.
Yeah.
It's almost like if you said that in a business environment, they'd be like, you haven't prepared, you don't know what you're talking about, so we're just going to do it on a whim? Why do we find it so hard? Have we lost our way a little bit there?
Yeah, of course.
I feel more in the Western world, I don't know whether I'm correct. I feel, you know, there's other beliefs, there's other parts of the world that I think embrace it more. It's almost like a superpower for them, and it almost feels like one that we're not necessarily utilizing.
And my first life, I worked a lot with leaders. And when I talked to leaders about making decisions, they actually told me this.
Really? They go with the feeling?
I felt it. You know, ultimately, I needed to make that call. And I just felt it was right. And of course, you know, you have all facts and you have figure, but ultimately, it's about that feeling.
I've had the feeling before. And what I noticed with it, I wasted a lot of time in a situation because I didn't listen. Yeah. Because it was too uncomfortable to act out what it was telling me. Mm-hmm. Have you seen this before? Do you agree with me that you can turn a feeling down so you almost can't hear it, but it will always be there and it will at some point reoccur?
Always.
You can't ever just get rid of it.
No, it will become more forceful. You know, pop out in different. In my facet, it was my body breaking at some time because I've been suppressing it. At some point, it just, you know, exploded. And emotion is not disappearing. It's going to come back.
And I believe in an emotion and intuition, I've learned, cannot be wrong. You can't judge the outcome on the feeling. You may think I made a wrong decision here, but actually you have to let it play out and time will tell.
So when I talk to people, I have very many of my coaches, they have this feeling of, is it a right or wrong decision? And I keep on telling them, my worldview, I don't have such a thing as right and wrong. The only thing we're doing, we're making an experience. So if I have a feeling to go for something, I go for it and I learn from it.
Yeah, that's great.
The worst thing we can do is actually to not act. To be so afraid of the consequences that we don't move. Because then we're doing the opposite of living. We're pausing our life because of the fear of consequences. But then we're walking through life with fear of consequences instead of actually living a life.
Somebody said to me once, it doesn't matter if your decision's wrong or right, as long as you make a decision.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you learn from it. And it might be that you're going to take a detour.
And maybe don't judge it too early either.
No, and then you make another tour, but you needed that to gain the experience to be able to walk left.
Super.
You know, and this is sometimes when we observe people and we think they're making a wrong decision. We have no clue what kind of muscle he is about to gain to be able to climb that mountain. And he might need to walk there to then be able to walk there. But the idea of someone walking there when we thought he should be walking there, it scares us and we're going to pull him back. And this is where the intuition comes, because he might feel, I need to go there. And the whole world is saying, but your mountain is here, hey? And I say, I'm sorry, it needs to be there. But then we have no clue about his own path. And this is when the consensus story, you know, this is the story of the society contra my story, becomes tricky.
We need to book another session next week.
A session? I feel like I'm on the hot seat
This is
here.
fantastic. I'm learning. I feel I'm gaining a lot from this interview. I didn't expect it. In closing, I'd love to ask you a couple of questions. Mm-hmm. I'd love to ask Johanna a couple of questions.
Okay.
People have used this question before, but I like it, so I'm going to use it as well. It certainly didn't come from me. I'm just using someone else's talented question here. If you could go back at any point in your life to a younger Johanna and you could say something to her, or give her a piece of advice, or both, would you tell me what it would be?
Oh, that's a beautiful question. I'd go back to the little child Johanna, and I would tell her how amazing she is, how much potential she has inside her, that she can go as far as she wants. And I would also tell her that if at any point of time she would feel lonely and scared, she just needs to turn around and she would see me holding her back. She's not alone on this.
Same vein. I know you work with mentors. I know you've had guidance in your life. If someone arrived at this table now with Johanna, the present Johanna, and they could help you in your journey of self-leadership and self-improvement, is there the next topic that you're working on at the moment where you'd say, help me with this, please? Could you share?
I mean, yeah. Life is about constant growth, right? So that goes for me as well. I think I would ask them to help me continue to work on the topic of fully trusting the process.
Without knowing the outcome.
Without knowing that.
That's hard.
Without needing to be in control. Without needing to know anything. Without becoming impatient. Simply having faith that what's going to happen is going to be the best. Yeah.
I have one more question. So we've talked about the past. I've asked you one about the present. Obviously, the natural way now will be to give you a future one. You can skip forward whenever you want. 10 years, 20 years, the end. What would you hope to see?
I think I go to the end.
You'd go to the end.
I'll go to the end, yeah, shortly before the end. And I'd like to see a very satisfied, in peace Johanna. I said I lived it to the fullest. I live this life to the fullest. I'm ready. I'm ready to go now. I've given everything I could. I've tried everything I could. I've been the best possible version of myself.
I love the way you said that and not the classic, like, I'd be happy. Because I think contentment is long lasting. Happiness would be more fleeting.
Yeah.
Johanna, I've really enjoyed talking to you today.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.